What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today I'm bringing you my new gaming PC, and this is a SkyTech Shadow gaming computer, and all the specs of this PC will be in the description. So without further ado, let's take a look at my gaming PC for 2016. When I first got the package, it comes in a big box, and then the PC is in a smaller box, and then surrounding those two, it comes with a keyboard and a mouse, and they're pretty junky, but once you get those out, it comes with a Wi-Fi adapter, USB, and some power cords. And once you get the PC out of the box, it comes with a whole bunch of plastic surrounding it, and once you get that out, you're left with the PC itself. Alright, so now we're doing an FPS test for all the games I currently own, and let me just say that every game I've played on it has ran flawlessly, so let's test our first game out, and that is Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Now, before we talk about really anything about the FPS for this game, or any other game in that matter, the recording software I am using right now is pretty taxing on my CPU, so the frame rate is going to be as well it is recording, but I guess if you're just playing this PC not to make videos about it and just play it, you get actually very much better frames per second. So when you're not recording on this PC, you're going to be running CSGO at about 180, 160 frames per second, and I've never ever seen it go below 100, so don't worry about that. But whenever you are recording with a software like Fraps for that matter, you're going to be running the game at around 60 to 70 FPS, and I know it's a very dramatic drop off, but it's still playable. Like, it's still 60 frames per second, and keep in mind this is on ultra settings, so the maximum settings you can have, and I bet if you just tweak the settings a little bit to make them a little bit lower, you'll run it at a very much higher FPS. The next game we have is Fallout 4, and without recording, you're going to be running this game on low settings at about 60 frames per second, and medium settings on 40, and I guess it just gets slower as you go up. And to be honest with you, low settings doesn't look that much different from high settings, just besides like the texture and the grass and trees and stuff. It still looks very well on low settings, and I've never really seen it go below 40 frames per second when you're playing on low settings, and it's still really nice to play on. Now, on the other hand, when you are recording, you are going to be running this game at about 50 to 30 FPS, and I know that's a little bad, and that's a downfall of this like PC here. It doesn't do very well with recording, but it still runs decently. The next game we had is Garry's Mod, and without recording, you're going to be running this game at about 130 to 110 FPS. And that's on ultra settings, so as high as you can go. And I've never really seen it drop below 100, but sometimes when you're playing on servers, you know, you can drop down to 80 FPS. I don't know what's that about, and when you are recording, you're going to be running this game at about 100 to 70 FPS. Now, keep in mind that is on ultra settings. The next game we have is H1Z1, and without recording on max settings, you're going to be 60 to 50 frames per second, and that is on max settings, so it does look very well. It runs really nice, and keep in mind this is a really big map to load in. So now when you are running this game with any software to record it, you are going to be running it at about 50 to 40, sometimes 30 frames per second, and keep in mind you can always change it to lower settings, but I just like to have my settings on max, and it just depends if you would rather have better graphics and lower frame rate, or you would rather have a better frame rate and lower graphics. The next game we have is World at War Custom Zombies, and no matter what, even if you're recording or you're not recording, you're always going to be running this game at about 90 frames per second on max settings, and the only time your frames ever drop are whenever there's zombies on the other side of the map and you're on the other side of the map, so it has to load in the entire map, and you can drop to about 80 frames per second, so it runs it really nice, and you don't have to worry about your frames dropping whenever you are recording. The next game we have is Just Cause 3, and without recording, you are going to be running this game on medium settings at about 60 to 50 frames per second. Sometimes when there's a lot of explosions, you can drop down to 40 and maybe even 30, depending on how big the explosions are. And whenever you are recording, you are going to be running at about 30 to 20 FPS, and I know that's kind of bad. But once again, that's kind of the downfall of this PC. The graphics card isn't the best, and sometimes your softwares are really taxing on your CPU. The final game I have is Minecraft, and when you are playing this game without recording, you're going to be running it at about 60 frames per second, and whenever you are loading new chunks, sometimes it can drop down to 40, sometimes 30 frames per second, and whenever you are recording, this game will run at about 30, sometimes 40 frames per second. So that's all the games I have to test for you today, guys. If you have any more questions about the PC, I've owned it for about 2 weeks now and I'm enjoying it, so if you have any questions, just ask me. I'll feel free to answer them, and if you guys did enjoy the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
was on the way to your crib, girl. I know you stay in Jersey. Why you lie about where you live? Rarely ever leave Brooklyn. It's your ass that got me here. Got you arching, got you golden, like we bringing back the rib. Oh my.